Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This is going to be a separate video for the Gratefulness Meditation channel. It's going to be about why you need a method or practice in terms of your connection to God. You should also need a master too, but that's not available to us in Gratefulness Meditation right now, but or anybody else, I guess, in the world. But that's also of value. But here's I talk about this here and give an explanation about that. So here's the video. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Sunday, May 24th. This video, I think, is going up tomorrow night at 9. I'm kind of lost here. But I have a video going. I think I'll put 2 today and then tomorrow, whatever. Had another health episode, minor one. I'll want to cover that in a bit. I'll weave that into this opening here in a minute. But this is really important. Somebody sent me, this woman, Wisdom of the Wood, says something that similar to what I say, and I want to talk about that here. She's a Christian, but a mystic, like somebody who's at least understands these principles. Weird Trump stuff, like he gave this another. He's just imploding, like just the Mad King stuff. Some more things I don't remember all to get into here. A lot of crazy stuff. But let's start off here because this is kind of like the most important things I talk about. But let's start here.
God is in control, then why doesn't he do something about what happens here on earth? Why is the world in the shape that it's in? If he's in control and a good God, why doesn't he change things? Why do I go through this suffering in my personal life? Because we have been hoodwinked. Our spiritual identity has been hidden from us for thousands of years. Jesus come not to be a savior and a way to get you back to heaven someday. He came to awaken us to these truths, this spiritual identity that is within each and every one of us.
So she has a different way of saying it, but I'm obviously somebody who's clicked into the ideas here. The essential ideas. And it's not anything brilliant. This is the thing, right? It's just you have to be willing to go past your indoctrination and accept what's just the real thing, just the natural thing. And I'll get into why that's so hard in a moment.
God in a sky outside of us is not in control. The Bible tells us that you have dominion. You have the power and authority. You call it. You name it. That the kingdom of God is not somewhere outside of you, that not someday when you die, it is within you right now. So what is our spiritual DNA that we've yet to completely understand and awaken to? And as we awaken to this, it transforms our lives, and then it transforms as a collective the world we live in. God is spirit. Spirit is...
So, I wonder, like, I'm just on TikTok, and I don't have the app, and I don't even know how I got this to full page. Like, I struggle working with TikTok. But, she's saying great things that, similar. This is the message. Like, no matter what religion it is, it's always the spiritual message. Any spiritual person will tell you the same thing. Any person who's on a spiritual path. It's just a matter of the method, which I'll get into in a moment. Because, that's what makes the difference. But, this is from 10,000 years ago or a million years in the future. This is just what needs to be said. And it's the first step. This isn't like, this is how you end up switching from being a material-based person to having a soul-driven existence, right? This idea that there's divinity within you and you have a spiritual purpose. People resist this because their egos don't want to hear it. And I would wonder I don't know what kind of people she has following her, but she's a Christian. And I know some of them won't be happy with what she's saying, right?
It's not seen. It is breath. If you blow your breath right now, you can't see it, but it exists. It is very, very real. It is the life force that is within everything, including you. Everything the divine is, see, we've separated it to this one God somewhere outside of us. But everything that he is, it's not even a he, but we're limited with words. Everything that he is, so are you in this world. You're not separate from it. That same breath, life force flows through you.
See, what she's talking about is prana. And she's having a word for it because Christianity, see, the problem with what she's saying here is you have to throw out like 95% of the Bible then. Because 95% of the Bible is full of shit that's not this, right? That's like the opposite of this. It's weird materialistic things. And I'm not just talking about the obsession with foreskin or the demonic aspect of God and the fucking human sacrifices and the animal sacrifices and all the stuff, the jealousy of God, all the weird shit they say, right? God is a king. I mean, they say Lord Jesus is king, right? So that's, again, God isn't king. That's just what stupid people needed to hear back then. And again, not stupid people in the sense of, low consciousness people that's all they could know. Like, so for them, you're trying to explain God to them and they can't understand it. There's people all the time you try to explain God to and they can't understand it because they don't have the ability for abstract thought. They're just not evolved enough in their spiritual journey. And it's not, I mean, I say these things because I'm frustrated with them, but it's, just where they are. So, the problem is that she's coming from this from a religion that, she's transcended her religion and she just doesn't know it, right? She's, leaving all the stuff of her religion behind and becoming a spiritual person. This is what Jesus did. She's doing what Jesus did. Any person who's doing this. Like I said, there's good Christians. There are people who are born with spiritual tendencies, but she has this knowledge inside of her, and she's just finding little tidbits here in the Bible, here and there, trying to, attribute it to the Bible. It has nothing to do with the Bible, right? I mean, she said the God's within you, but they said Bible says this. And again, she's talking to Christians, so she's got to base it in this bullshit book, right? But it's the method, which we'll get into in a moment.
This personality, this physical being called Krista, is temporary. We all see that when people pass away. That life force leaves them. But does it mean that they don't exist, that they weren't real, that they don't continue? Spirit is outside of any containment, free.
Okay, so, and all this comes originally from Sanskrit teachings that were given in Sanskrit, the Vedas and these things. Frickin' dogs, I gotta stop them from barking. I'm gonna switch over to a voiceover. I'm happy with this person. Like, this is, whoever sent this to me, I think it's a person who does the meditation. But the problem is the lack of a method. Let me switch. He's got a nice way of presenting it. And, I know it's going to fall in dumb ears because, it just will. I mean, there are some people who are spiritual, Christian spiritual people that'll find this woman, Southern people, something like that, people who can identify with her. And they might, move a little bit. But let me switch over to voiceover here. Okay, so let's start off with her saying that Jesus comes not to be a savior, but to be an example. But if you say that, then you have to say, well, then he can't be the only one, right? Like, why would there only be one person? In fact, human beings need, like, many people like this in the world at the same time. Many Jesuses. So, like, that's where Christianity fails. And I don't know, she's talking to a Christian audience, and she's, struggling with being a spiritual person and having a very remedial method. Because, these ideas are in every literature, every spiritual literature. If you go to India, you'll hear similar things to what I say. People know about some skaras there. It's framed in a different way. There's people who claim to do Raja Yoga, and maybe they do. They have transmission. I'm not sure if it's the same as Sajmarg. It's, Sajmarg transmission, I think, is unique in the sense that the person doing the transmission doesn't deplete their own prana. Whereas in the past, I think that was not the case. But whatever. Like, I can't speak for everything that's going on in the world spiritually. The problem is, like, you have the idea. So, I talked about there was this New Age guru, I think her name was Gangaji. Ganga. They called her Ganga for short. And she was a woman from Tennessee who went to India like some hippie. Like, she was in Santa Fe when I lived there. And she had her own little following. And her big thing was she went to some guru and he said, "You are that." And she meditated on "you are that" and came up with this spiritual revelation or something. And, I'm not saying that didn't happen. I don't know. But it's, like, you can come up with these ideas and understand them and know them. Oh, God's inside of me, right? So then you need to have a method to connect to the divinity within you, right? Like, all right, you know now that God's inside of you, but how do you connect with him? What's the method? And the method is always some form of meditation. Meditation is a state of concentration, and concentration is not the right word, but it's, just, it's a state your mind goes into where you relax and you ruminate over something without, controlling the thoughts, where you're just in a, when you're like a little kid, or even now, if you're on a train or in the back of your car and your parents are driving, you're just staring outside, and you get into a meditative state, but you're not sleeping, right? And there's the deepest meditative state's called samadhi, where you fall into a sleep-like state, but it's not sleeping, right? Which is something that's achieved through yogic meditation. And so then it becomes, what's the object of your meditation? And so this is something that was thought out when the Sajmarg method of meditation that I do came about. Like, how do you get the idea of the abstract idea of God? What this woman was talking about, this spirit, right? When they first described the Atman, because the soul was discovered in India, and I mean, the evidence is overwhelming for this, but it's just true, and they call it the Atman. And they described it, something that fire can't burn, that water can't wet. Like they were trying to describe something that's indescribable, like that's alive and yet you can't see it, right? You have a soul, but what does that even mean? Like, what people imagine, if you're some primitive person banging on fucking rocks with a stick or something, and somebody's trying to tell you about your life force that's inside you. But like this woman said, my first experience of this, I was like 10 or 11 years old. My grandfather died, sort of my favorite relative. He's like an action hero. He took me deep sea fishing and into like playing pool and shit, like all that kind of, war hero kind of guy. Played professional football for $10 a game. I talk about this guy. And when he died, they put him in the wake, and I went up there. I'm like, he's not here. Fuck are you doing? Like, why is they put lipstick on him? I'm like, he's not gonna wear lipstick. He's a fucking old school, tough guy, right? This guy's like a badass motherfucker. He went to World War I when he was 15 years old. Like he had, I had a switchblade that I got from him, whatever it was. Maybe after he died, I don't know. Maybe before, I don't know. And other things. My brother had his leather football helmet with no mask on it, right? Like he made fishing poles and he fucking built boats, and he was a fireman. He broke his back falling off a fire truck, right? Like he was back in the day when they didn't have oxygen masks, And so like you think this guy's going to wear lipstick on? This guy's like old school. And they put lipstick. I could see the blue under his lips. He did a bad job. It didn't even fucking work. And I'm like, he's not here. Why are we doing this? It's weird. The fucking, it's just this lump of fucking, this corpse is just sitting there. It's not my grandfather. Whatever I called my grandfather was gone. And that's my first sort of experience with the soul, right? And so, like there's this idea of the essence of your life essence, which, this idea of prana, the creative force and energy, right? The Atman, the soul, like the causal body, and these subtle bodies, right? Manas, the mind, and Chit, the consciousness, and these things that they've known about in ancient India for years. So she doesn't have access to that information. And so the information itself it doesn't mean you're spiritual or you're on a spiritual path. It means you're able to accept an idea, but you have to do something with that idea, right? Well, what are you going to do with it? What's going to make that idea become something of a dynamic? So you need a system of meditation to go within and focus on the divinity within you. And the second master's Sajmarg system, he was channeling this stuff, and they said, the idea was divine light in the heart. You would meditate on the heart and, the etheric heart, because your soul resides there. Your soul is in the Atma is in your heart, but also there's spiritual grossness, all your impressions, all your things that you accumulate, all your, grossness, all your gambling addiction, or your, violence, or, whatever you focus on, right? Football you watch, things that you go, when you close your eyes at night, you see in your eyes, you hear it play a song, or you re-see something disturbing, you're watching a movie and you can't unsee it, like that kind of thing. That's all stored in your etheric heart as well. And so there's a cleaning method developed, and that's, a method, right? So now you have a method where things that are blocking your path are cleaned, and there's, an object of meditation, which is the divine essence of God, God's love in your heart. It's a feeling of love, and, the idea of light, because it's something lighter, because people can't focus on abstractisms, so eventually this object changes to something else, because you get into this meditative state, and then you start feeling God's love, and you start experiencing God internally, and then through this transmission that enhances it and makes it pop, right? It makes it, more experiential. And so that's where there's a method. Like, you have to have a method. And there's lots of spiritual people like this woman who are leaving their religion behind, but they're not able to access. I mean, maybe they can do it on their own without knowing what they're doing, but they're not able to access this because it's just words. Like, they don't have a method. They don't have a system in which you're connecting to God, because Christianity doesn't want you to do that, right? They don't want you to connect to divinity within you. And so, you know, um, I talk about this all the time. It's the most important thing I say, because this is what's going to change humanity. If humanity is going to evolve, it's going to be a spiritual evolution where people, if you see that there's been recorded saints, and if you're only going to talk about Christian saints, so it doesn't matter, or Hindu saints or Muslim saints or whatever, that there have been spiritual people recorded all over the world. And you can meet these people, and people who are somewhat spiritual. people who are, they're just on a different evolutionary, they're on a higher evolutionary plane. Maybe it's your grandfather, your grandmother, or, somebody, who's just a little bit, sincerely religious person who exudes, you feel God's love around them. Like, you can experience people like that. Like, there are people who just, they're more into this and they put effort into it. And when people put effort to, people can fucking sit on a unicycle and spin fucking plates on their foreheads because they put enough practice into it. And, if you put enough practice into the divinity within you, then you're gonna connect, right? And so the fucking, really shitty part about this problem with people is they can hear it and they can even like it, but they won't do anything about it. Oh, that sounds nice. And, that's the downfall of humanity, because it's something your soul, it's like a natural thing to do. It's a natural thing to connect to the divinity within you. It's a natural thing to want to feel God's love. Like, it's like breathing, all these things, but you're not forced to do it. You have to do it by choice, right? And this woman started off by saying, why has God, allow bad things to happen? And her answer isn't great, because she doesn't, she's limited by her Christian teaching. But it's the problem with Western people, or people that your life is supposed to be fun and joyful and pleasureful, and you're supposed to just, if things are bad, there's something wrong, and your life is just, you're told this all the time. Oh, why aren't you happy? Everyone should just be happy. You should fucking, because that's not what life's about. Every life is, only shitty lives have no controversy. Only boring lives of fucking insignificant people they don't have to overcome anything, right? And so you have to overcome things, and and that's the beauty of life, overcoming them. That's where the real joy comes from, because you do what you're supposed to do. You have assignments, and you complete your assignments, right? You have work to accomplish. You have a soul's path. And so you're not supposed to come down here and just, who said God wants you to be happy? Has that ever been said? Or you might, it doesn't even say that in the fucking Bible. It's not true. God never said, happiness, sure. You should be happy and grateful. But not because of your circumstances, because you're just grateful. Oh, thank you, God, for everything. God has a plan. God, thank you. Something bad happens to you, thank you, God. That's why I always talk about be grateful, right? That's the principle of the highest state, is to be for gratitude for everything. Not just the good things, not, like something great happened to me. I won the game, great. Thank you, God, God's great. I lost the game, fuck you, God. So, whatever it is, right? But the real tragedy is people can hear these words from any number of people. These ideas are similar, and it isn't the words that matter, it's the practice. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to find a system in which I can maximize my connection to God. I'm going to start working on this through a meditative process to go within and experience my soul and the divinity within me, and then I'm going to start listening to them, and following their lead, right? And until you do that, you're not doing anything. Like, your life sucks because you haven't done anything. Until there's some kind. It doesn't even have to be called God. When people start to connect with their true inner voice, not some psychological aberration, like some split personality or some demon, but the real divinity within them. And when they're able to clear themselves of their bullshit enough so that they can dive in and connect to the divinity within them, that's when real spirituality starts. And then it's a matter of having the best method to accomplish that, right? Everything has to become practical. Like, how do I practically bring God into my life in terms of a system, a method, right? Like, you can come up with ideas like, oh, I'll eat chocolate, or I'll, go skydiving or whatever, right? Like, you can, you can say this is how I experience divinity, and yeah, sure, maybe there'll be something there. But, first of all, there has to be some kind of intention. Like, there has to be some intentionality. Like, there has to be, all right, I'm bringing God into this experience. Like in the Sajmark system, there's the transmission, the cleaning, and then there's thing called constant remembrance, where you have the idea that God's there experiencing your life, like whatever you're going through, God's going through it with you. Like it's not you, but God who's experiencing it. It's not you who's making these decisions, but it's God. You're replacing your ego with divinity. It's very effective, and you're supposed to remember God constantly. So bring God with you no matter what you're doing. Any activity, God is there with you. And there's intentionality there. There's, a way of bringing God with you. And so when you do that, let's say you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. Like an example of this is the second master of the system, Babaji. Some guy came whining. There's a big deal of like going to your guru and falling at his feet and saying, "Oh, I've sinned and I'm a piece of shit." Like it's like a big thing in India, right? And this guy comes to Babaji, he's wailing, "Oh, I'm fucking drinking. I'm a drunk." And Babaji said, "Oh, you can drink." The guy said, "Really? I can drink?" Yeah. He goes, "There's only one condition, though. You have to think that I'm taking the drink and not you. Like the divine master is taking the drink and not you. Go in there and think that, it's God and not you drinking." And so the guy's like, "Yeah, great." And so he goes, a couple of days go by, he goes to take a drink, and he, drinks alcohol, and he immediately throws up like violently. And then he's like, he's got an aversion to it. And he's like, "Oh, fuck me," whatever, right? But like the one condition was to bring God with him into the equation, and when he did that, God was like, "Yeah, you ain't doing this anymore. I'm not, you're not making me suffer," which, God ultimately does because you don't include God, but God's there with you, suffering along with you, with your, your gambling addiction and your bullshit stuff, right? So when you start bringing God into certain, your life and completely into every decision and every action, then you start changing, the things that you do, like the things that are bad for you, things that are, demonic, the things that are, inappropriate for you to be doing. You no longer have the desire to do them because there's some higher part of you, that your higher nature is there saying, "Yeah, you don't want to do this," right? And the other idea is in the future you have reached this, God realization. You've maximized your full potential, and you've reached this, whatever it is, right? This stage of merging back into the divinity. You've come back. You go back to the source, and you become the best version of yourself. You're also bringing that mastered, where you've mastered yourself. You're bringing that future essence into your present existence. It's kind of an interesting thing, but that's, what you're doing. Like you've at some point accomplished this, and so you're bringing that part of you into that accomplishment because that person, that friend within has to be with you. Your future self has to be with you to accomplish all these things. God has to be with you to accomplish, to overcome all these obstacles. And so, there's a real method here, right? And it's a very simple method, but it takes, intentionality. You have to have this idea, I want to bring God into my existence in every way, shape, or form. There's lots of people who just do this Sajmark method the same way people just go to church and they're not paying attention. They're daydreaming, thinking about playing football or what they're going to eat after, what's for lunch, or, they're thinking about some other thing, right? Checking out other people in the, thing, whatever. They're not there listening to the sermon. They're not there participating. And that happens everywhere. Like there's, in the method, the system that I do, a lot of people want to spend time with the master because it's a thing in India. And they think they've, if they get to meet the master, spend time with them, they've got something. But, in reality, they were, they're just, there's a method. You have to do it yourself. Knowing somebody who's, knowing somebody who's like rich or somebody who's talented or whatever doesn't make you that, right? Just because there's people like in families of complete losers, but they themselves become very successful. And, they might contribute and share some of their success with their family. But that doesn't mean the family's successful, right? One person is. And maybe the family contributed to that person's success in good ways or bad ways, which is probably the case to some extent. But still, it's that one person who reached the goal. And so it's something that you have to be active in. I saw this a lot. Like there was a time where, one of my buddies was doing security, which is a very kind of a strong word for what it was, but they were just there to make sure that people didn't, overrun the master. Like they just, they would like bum rush the door trying to be around him. It's fucking brutal. And I saw these three things. The first one, well, I didn't see this one thing. There was this, my friend who was up there, and Chargy was handing out chocolates to all the kids. Like there's, the kids that kind of bored. There wasn't anything to do. The ashram was just, they would hang out with each other. So there's other kids to hang out with, but the kids mostly complain because, I'm sure even more so now. I don't think there's any internet, whatever reception was there. I mean, this was pre-cell phones. This is in the, not pre-cell phones, but it wasn't as a big of a thing, but it was in the, this is in the 90s and the early 2000s. And, my friend was standing up there, and he's handing out chocolates. And some young woman who was like probably 25, but she looked like a kid because she was small, snuck up there, and in charge is like, this is just for the kids, right? And she snuck up this thing, took some chocolate, and Chargy saw it. And he said under his breath, this guy's standing right next to him, you betray yourself for a chocolate, right? Like, like, you think you're getting something here? Like, you're scamming like fucking. Another time I was in India, and there was this girl, and she's like, can I go in? It's my birthday. And and the guy's like, well, he's resting right now. And the security guard turned his back, and she signaled to her friends, and they all went running upstairs, a bunch of young girls. And I'm like, fuck, if you're doing something that you're told not to do, right? Like, how do you think this is going to benefit you spiritually? There's like lots of these things I experienced. There's a time where the security left. This one guy I was telling you about, he was pissed off because he was doing all the work, and the other guy was sharing in the credit, right? and so he left early, and he didn't assign anyone to the door because he was being like a bitch about it. Because I told him about it, and he felt bad later on. And I went up, and there was a guy who, younger guy who had his kid, like a baby. He just, was probably 25 years for his son or something. And I said, what's going on? He goes, it's bad. And I walk in, and Chargy was eating his lunch, and he was just sitting there, and there was this door that was in this like little meditation room, and they had this place where Chargy slept, these quarters. And there were all these people who just were staring at him, and just like there was 50 or 60 of them. They all just piled in there. And so I said to him, Master, you want me to close this door? And he said, please. There was a door between him and them. And I think he didn't want to shut it out because it was like, spiritually bad thing to do, but he was clearly bummed. It was really sad. Like, he looked at like, what the fuck? It was the end of the gathering. So like you guys haven't got enough. Like, you're just, like parasitic almost kind of stuff. And I closed the door, and I was like, everyone's got to leave, in which they all knew. Like, some of these people were doing the thing. These are the same people that completely shit on Chargy after Daji took over. Like, this one woman in particular, this Indian woman who used to give these talks about how she would give a sitting, and she wanted to keep all the transmission for herself. And I mean, she was just like fucking big fat fucking piece of shit. Her husband was real rich, loud, just obnoxious, crazy, and just and she completely turned on Chargy after he died. But she would run to him and like try to sit on his fucking lap, right? Just brutal shit. Like so those people they're not doing the practice, right? They're not incorporating God into their life. Like I mean, they might have the system, they might have a method, but are they using it, right? Are you making it practical? Are you doing it and bringing it into your life? So in every system, there's going to be some people, whatever it is, whatever religion they grow up, whatever druidic sort of tribal practice, whatever stuff they have, whatever elders or shaman or priests or monks or whatever it is, gurus. There's going to be some people who have a predisposition for spirituality. And there's going to be some people who connect to God, feel God in their life, they feel God's presence, they see God around them, to whatever extent, like whatever level their commitment, whatever their past, some scars for spirituality are, whatever it is. And, there's people who like intellectual stimulation. They like the idea of talking about God and, reading theology or, whatever religion it is, or multiple religions, or, it's a mental approach. And that's, it's people who are into science fiction, sci-fi movies, and they learn how to speak Klingon, and they argue, about this thing or the other thing about some kind of thing in that particular universe, Marvel or fucking, Star Trek or whatever, like whatever they're Mr. Who, Doctor Who, But it's just mental, right? It's a mental practice, and it's imaginary to whatever extent. loving devotion to God is great, and mental stimulation, mental thirst for spiritual knowledge is also good. But there has to be a practical approach, and you have to move forward on your spiritual journey. You have to be going up levels in terms of your spiritual evolution. It doesn't mean you're a nice person. Doesn't mean you're successful in the material world. It doesn't mean any of those things. But you're on your spiritual path. You're doing the work that God assigned you, and you're also evolving into higher levels of consciousness. And for that, you need a method, right? This woman will have to leave the Bible and Christianity behind her. And she has maybe a bunch of people that come to her, that listen to her. She's dynamic because she's got a spiritual angle to a religion, religious pursuit. And in a way, she's transcended her religion, but she's still talking about her religion, right? And trying to convince religious people to be spiritual is a fucking waste of time. There's people who are craving more. You have to find the people who are. It's not enough for them, but most of those people have quit, and they see through their bullshit, and now they're anti-God. They have a prejudice against divinity and God because of their bullshit religion, and so people have to get over all that stuff. And talking about it makes no difference, right? People have to find their own certain thing, and go with it. This third master of the Sajmarg system. He used to, Charji, he was Babaji's disciple. And he used to edit all of Babaji's, his works, his essays, he wrote a bunch of messages. He wasn't really a writer. And, a lot of his exchanges in terms of letters. Letters he wrote to people. And some of them were just, beautifully written and had a lot of good things in there. And he found this, they took a bunch of excerpts from letters. Some of the stuff was personal. They, to the people that were at, whatever it was. But they took excerpts of his letters and they called it Voice Real. And he had this book, and Charji had edited it. He had read through it like 3 or 4 times. And he read this line where Babaji said, "I never thought that was my master's was not also mine." For Western people, it's saying, I never thought what was God's was not also mine. That was God's was also his, right? In terms of, not in a possessive, Trump-like, narcissistic, egotistical way, but in a spiritual way, like whatever was God's was his, right? Because he was a completely devoted slave to God, right? With taking a, position of, in his case, the divine master. And Charji said he read that and it had a profound effect on him. But I heard it, like I'm telling you about it, and I understand how it affected him. He comes from that master disciple culture, and he was Babaji's disciple in a past life when he was Pantanjali. And so for Charji, that was it. That was his thing. That sort of, changed his whole attitude towards he just sort of clicked in and got it. He had some kind of spiritual transformation because of that attitude. And, we all had some of those things happen to us where we've adjusted to all those things, right? And so let's segue into my health thing. And so, I've been meditating on my heart now, the essence of divine light in the heart, right? The supposition of divine light in the heart for 3 years coming this. It was 1993, so it'll be my 33rd year this year. And I calculated it, and I probably meditated over 25,000 hours, which is crazy, right? And when, as I'm meditating, how much I was reading or thinking about God or talking about God, like here, how much my life was devoted to God since starting the practice, right? And it has an accumulative effect, right? We have, this thing in Sajmarg where you have spiritual condition, which is whatever your spiritual condition is. Is it light? Is it heavy? Sometimes it could be, you could be going through a gross period of time of cleaning, so things are coming up. So your spiritual condition isn't necessarily good, but you have also spiritual approach, and that's your approach to God, how close in proximity you are to God. And there are a lot of people who are religious, religious people, devotional people who have good spiritual condition, but they're not moving at all any closer to God in terms of their overall approach, right? You have these two different characteristics. Anyways, I've meditated all these hours on my heart. I never thought about my heart before that. And no one in my family had heart problems, and it wasn't much of a concern. Then out of the blue, I had COVID, and my heart started to skip beats. I had an irregular heartbeat at times, weird feelings, things like that. I had this one issue where I thought I was having a heart attack, but it felt like my muscles just all went in spasm. Like everything kind of locked up, my back and my shoulders, my arms, and so whatever, my whole upper body. And I thought I was having a heart attack, but I don't think that now. It's happened to me probably 20 times over the next, since I was in my 30s, and whatever. Um, Weird thing. And so, initially I thought it was my heart, but nothing really happened with it. And I was always in good shape. I was always, doing physical work, and I was always been physically active. And then all of a sudden, when I had COVID, my heart started to skip beats, right? And I've talked about this kind of extensively in the other videos. And then, more recently, one day I woke up and my heart just started to pound and race. And it happened a second time. The second time I had my wife and I were listening to my heart with a stethoscope, and it was kind of scary how fast it was fucking beating. It was pounding in my chest, like pounding. Like it was really pounding hard. And I thought, oh, this is it, right? I was kind of freaked out. The second time, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a regular fucking thing. So I was kind of freaked out. And then a week later, it happened again. It wasn't as bad, but still, and I now was like, oh, this is kind of fucking normal, right? And it didn't happen for like 6 weeks, and it happened again a couple weeks ago. And then 2 nights ago, and then last night, not nearly as bad. And the second time I had a pulse meter, and it got up to 250 beats per minute. My resting heart rate is around, 50 to 60 to 70, depending on what's happening. So and when I exercise, my heartbeat gets up to about 90, maybe 100. And it was regularly at 100. I was happy when it was 140, right? Because, it was up to 250. Like, that's crazy. And 140 is fast. And so, I was thinking about, but by the time it happened the last couple of times, it's been kind of normal. And, if you either believe things are coming from God or they're not, and there's all these physical ailments that people have had that do my spiritual practice. And I just, last night I'm kind of over the thing, and I'm just like, whatever. I guess this is just, going to be some kind of, regular occurrence. And I'm going to do my best to manage it and see if I can avoid it and find out what's happening. Like, I don't trust the allopathic medical community. But, it's a big difference when you're not scared, when it doesn't provoke a panic reaction or a fear-based reaction, which it did the first couple of times. But now I don't feel scared at all. I want the thing to stop, but even, I've thought about this myself. Dying from cardiac arrest is probably one of the best ways to go. In terms of, there's not a lot of pain and suffering. It doesn't build up to that. Inevitably your heart stops. It's just what it takes for your heart to stop. So I'm like, not that I'm ready to go. I'm towards, I'm getting the older part of my life, and if I've had I saw my wife had a Vedic astrology reading. I've talked to her before about that. I talked about it here. And when I was 29, and the guy told me all kinds of things about my life. I was in this Rahu period. Vedic astrology is different than, I guess, is it Greek astrology? I don't know what the other one is. The zodiac sign. But the Vedic is better, but it's not complete. Like, it's been lost, some of it. But he had a computer program. He put in my time of birth, and my day of my birth. And he could tell me all kinds of things that he knew about me just from that had happened. And he said things like I was going to be a great teacher, which I thought was laughable. But, the other things he told me were quite accurate. I went through a Rahu period, which, I fell off a zip line, when I was 10. And by the time I was 14, and I went to a Rahu period when I was 10, or whatever it was, maybe 12. I'm not sure what it was. Maybe it was 14, like every 7 years. Yeah. So it was when I was 14, I went to a Rahu period, and that's when I got the concussion. And I stayed in that Rahu period for 10 years, for 18 years. So it must have been when I was 10 years old. So whatever it was. That's, I think, when I got mono. And then I fell off I had all these things. And it's typified by depression and feeling lost. And I was that's how I was. It's a dark shadow planet. And everything the guy described during those periods, I went through. And so I knew this was accurate. And then he said some other things like, it seemed like I was going to go through some physical crisis in the year 2044 or 5 or something like that. I don't have it anymore. I lost the notebook. I wrote all these things down. But I was thinking about how they can actually predict things, and of course, you can change those things. You can change your destiny, for good or for bad. But in reality, a lot of these things are already written, and that you're going to go through. And that's how I was feeling about this thing with my heart. And I just felt like, my meditations have gotten so great, and I've definitely transformed spiritually since that the heart thing's been happening, and I'm so much more focused in on my heart, my meditations and things, and whatever. So I started to meditate um, last night. When it first was coming, there was an onset, and then it started to really beat. So I got up because there's a bloating to my stomach, which happens, which is the whole thing. And somebody suggested aloe vera. I've got some of those pills. I'm going to try that. I've got some other things I'm looking into to stop the bloating in my stomach. I'm eating a lot less, so whatever. But then I started meditating, and before the beating of my heart was so, when you tune into it, when you're meditating, you're actually just you're moving your consciousness to that area that's having a fucking spasm, and it freaked me out the other times. I couldn't meditate because I couldn't really. I mean, I was trying to avoid thinking about how hard my heart was beating. I was like, I didn't even want to do the finger stick all that much because it was, I mean, when I saw it went up to 250 beats, it freaked me the fuck out, right? So, but now I just don't give a shit anymore. I'm like, oh, whatever. This is just what's happening. And so I was able to sort of meditate right on and it slowed it all down. It just eventually, I got over it, and then it stopped altogether the irregular beating, and I just went back to normal, and I just had really good meditation. So, what I'm trying to say is like, all these things are planned in some way or another. There's some reason for them, and being a person that is working to be spiritually and working to be grateful, this is part of what you have to do. Like, you can't just talk about, you can't just read scripture or hear somebody else's words and parrot them. You have to experience them for yourself. And, I hope that people will, I don't know, will eventually come to do that. It just doesn't seem like in mass people are, or even, a small percentage of the population, because nobody wants to hear about that shit. But anyways, my voice is starting to go here. I want to take a little snooze. I'm going to make more. Okay, so took a little snooze. I was pretty tired. I just wanted to add one little thing to this. So I looked at a few more or two other of this woman's videos on TikTok, and one of them had the comments right on the side. And she was talking about people who had been hoodwinked by their religion and God's inside you. This is one of her common messages. And the comments, like the first four of them, were like, basically in one way or another telling her she's full of shit and it's blasphemy. And like I was saying, her audience is mostly Christian, so she's going to frame the basis of her newfound discovery about God being within you in terms of like, the Christian religion. It's going to be a framework. But like what she said earlier in the thing, like I said before, about how, he's an example. Well, if he's an example, then there has to be other examples, right? Like there has to be people who find divinity within them before Jesus and after him. So if that's the case, it would behoove the everybody to look into that, right? And see what's out there, what's available in terms of methods and practices to establish this relationship. And there's going to be like a spiritual science. There's a science of spirituality, like what happens to spiritual people. There's going to be a set of steps, a set of different landing spots or way stations on your spiritual journey as you move through a spiritual process. There's, if there's a destination, and if your destination is return to the source, which every spiritual person, talks about, that you're returning to the source. If that's the destination, then you have to see if the person talking has reached the destination. There was somebody who did the meditation and went to a gathering and these things. Did the heartfulness, before I, knew that Dodgy was a piece of shit, and I, all that stuff. And there's a few people who tried it, and they were also branching out. These are people who heard about it from me, and there was other people who did Sajmarg, years before that, and they would go and do something else. They would quit and do something else, which, in the Sajmarg system, it's no big deal if people do that. There's no threats or, there's no, oh, you're going to hell kind of thing. There's none of that. There's no pressure you're supposed to put on people. If people find something that suits them better, then, you wish them well and whatever it is, right? But the thing is that there was this one specific person who, wrote to me and said, there's all these other people that say the same thing or say similar things. And I'm like, yeah, that's just how it is. Anybody who's spiritual, even people who are con people, people who are, they are shitty gurus, fake gurus, will learn to be able to grift and repeat the same things as other people, just do it performatively. And so the words themselves do not make you spiritual, nor do the ideas. It's whether there's a practice and whether you're able to, through that practice, legitimately connect to divinity and move forward on your spiritual journey. And there's going to be, all these various, people have these spin-off, religions or spiritual practices. And so, like, the only real way to deal with it is to pray to God and ask God to send you the system that's best for you. What I think the person who was writing to me about it was saying was, they wanted to be a part of an organization. And, and there is none anymore in terms of Sajmarg. And so, yeah, but there's nothing out there that was like, can deliver this kind of, like, I don't know everything that's out there, so I can't speak about it, right? And don't care. So there has to be some way of you finding what's the best. And it's hard for you to determine that if you're starting where you're starting, and you to evaluate a people or a person or a group of people or a method, a system, when you yourself haven't reached that goal. And so all these things are going to sound the same. The various practices, the various teachings, people are all going to say the same things because the idea is simple, that there's divinity within you and there is a way to connect to that divinity, and there is a spiritual process that you go through, or understanding that the ideas that are there, the dogma, the information about God is going to start off and oftentimes be very similar, but someone can just parrot those things, parrot something else somebody else is teaching, and and pretend that they are a guru and they know something and they can help you reach the goal or whatever it is, or help you on your spiritual path. But knowledge itself doesn't mean anything, right? Anybody could look up something on ChatGTP, and ChatGTP can explain something to you, and it might sound good. Somebody asked, I read this comment a little while ago, and they said, what is Paul's, whatever, spiritual practice or whatever it is. And they talked about me being a Christian. It was like, it was grok or something. And then the person pressed him and said, Paul doesn't do that, he does this, and then they came back with something else. Somebody else asked about Pockets of the Future, and they found some, like, Danish videos. There's a few people who have copied the terms Pockets of the Future for different things, and some people have copied the idea of apocalypse. Maybe not even copied it. They came up with a similar idea, but they, not an idea, but the name or a term. But this one group of people who was Pockets of the Future, they were about technology, and they were like Danish or something. And they had a video called Pockets of the Future, and ChatGTP conflated those two things, my channel and that person's videos. And so they're talking about me being this technological person and stuff that I know nothing about, right? Because, they're just gathering information, but they've never done any spiritual practice. They've never done anything. They're just some computer program, some AI bullshit thing, right? And so people can, the information can be there, but do they have a method or system? And, and is there something practical involved? Like, that's what I was trying to say in this whole video. All right, anyway, so that's, I just want to add those things here. Let's move on to the other stuff. Okay, So speaking of frauds,
My husband, as tradition, would donate his entire paycheck back into the organization. I am following suit. It is my honor and deepest pleasure
I'm so sad. I'm crying. It's so fucked up.
to pledge my entire paycheck back into this organization.
All right. So first of all, Charlie Kirk was a grifting piece of shit who received hundreds of millions of dollars from fucking Israel, pro-Israeli lobby, to grift and all the shit I've talked about. Charlie Shekels, right? And the organization's full of shit, and she's full of shit. She got $2.5 million in GoFundMe donations after he died. And, it's the same thing when they say Trump pledges fucking, this thing. Yeah, are you suffering at all? Like, she's got multiple houses and all this kind of stuff, right? I mean, just a lying sack of shit. Anyways. But, she's really spiritual. She's really religious, right? Okay, so this fake thing happened. My wife sent this to me last night. And I didn't register it, but I was scanning through Twitter. And there's this woman, and there's all kinds of memes with her, right? Like, what she saw. And I'll show you a couple of those. Here's this one.
What is that?
Sounds like
today, but this obviously comes just a couple of weeks after a shooting at the White House.
All right, so they said, there was a shooting, and they killed a guy, a gunman at the White House because the guy's trying to, whatever their bullshit thing they're doing. All right, so let me show you a few of these memes. All right, some of these are gross, or like this one.
What is that?
All right. There's other ones. Okay, I guess that was the only one. There's other ones I passed by, but I can't find those. And I kept on seeing that woman. I was like, where did I see her before? Then I remembered my wife had sent that to me yesterday. So it's some kind of bullshit thing they're doing. I don't know. So here's Tulsi Gabbard thing.
It's time for a short farewell for America's embattled Director of National Intelligence. The position is a big job, overseeing and funding the 18 intelligence
What's wrong, Tulsi? Why are you so sad, bro? Bro, why are you so sad?
agencies scattered across the U.S. government and serving as the president's top intelligence advisor. But Director Gabbard made a critical misstep early in office when in March 2025 she testified to the Senate Intelligence Committee on Iran's nuclear capabilities.
Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
Trump did not like her appraisal, telling reporters this a few months later.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to heaven.
Trump bombed Iranian nuclear sites for the first time in June last year, and her return visit to the Senate Intelligence Committee this March went about as smoothly as her first.
Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, yes or no?
Senator, the only person who can determine what is and is not an imminent threat is the president.
You remember that bullshit?
With that
They clipped your nuts, Tulsi. Tulsi, what happened to your nuts?
statement, Gabbard admitted her job had no real utility if the intelligence community's function was not to advise on imminent threats. It's a striking exit for Gabbard, who was a Democrat just 4 years ago. But in 2020, she left the party, calling it a, quote, elitist cabal of warmongers fueled by cowardly wokeness. Gabbard announced her resignation yesterday, citing her husband's cancer.
All right. So this, how Tulsi Gabbard gave up everything and got nothing. That was the name of this video, which is, I'm sure they get into and analyzing this thing. But this is how Trump leaves people in his wake. Like, a true leader, a true person. I mean, when they talk about great athletes, it's how does that athlete make their teammates better? How does their play? First, you have to be great yourself, but then you have to lift up the people on your team. You have to, embolden them, enable them, and take your greatness and find ways to make your teammates, better, right, and give them opportunities. So that's just sports, but like in life, on a spiritual level, that's like even more important. How do you affect other people? People come into your sphere. What do they look like? What's their life like after after being connected to you, right? The people who are, that you're with. Did you pull them up? Did you affect them positively, right? And, just your footprint, like even your environment you live in, right? Like one thing that I can say in terms of the farms that I've created, there has been, especially now, there has been, the most recent ones have been, where there's beneficial to wildlife. We have a pasture now that's filled with, all kinds of natural pollinators and creatures, and we've created an environment that's made the world a better place. Environment, like not a big way, small way, like small farm, small footprint. But as opposed to spraying it with Monsanto, Satan, fucking toxic shit and those types of things, right? As opposed to farming in that way, or being out and owning land and turning it into a toxic waste stump, or just what you're using in terms of your household products and flushing that shit down into the sewer system, and that goes out to the environment, or your a septic tank which leaks into the ground, right? And you're using chemicals and taking those chemicals and either bleaches and cleaning chemicals or beauty products or whatever. These people wear these horrific smelling perfumes and dyes, and just everywhere they go it affects the environment. My wife and I experienced somebody wearing some horrible thing that was like almost made us sick, right? It was so somebody would just slather themselves in some kind of cheap perfume. Like that's like a more understandable way of seeing it. But then there's energy. Like what kind of energy field do you have, right? And Trump has bad energy. Like everywhere he goes, he turns things into shit. And all these people that were in his sphere, Rachel Maddow, that dude, had an episode where she went through all the people that ended up in fucking jail now that used to be Trumpers. And Trump has falling outs with everybody. And they're always left worse off. And all these people in his administration, their lives are going to be ruined. And when this all shit goes down and Trump is the fucking laughing stock of the world, as like he is now, and it gets worse, all these people that were around him and supporting him and kissing his ass, and all these people he'll throw under the bus to save face for himself, expect them to fall on their swords. He's just a fucking disaster. He's a toxic fucking piece of shit, right? And that's, hilarious because all these people deserve everything they get. Okay, so this also happened. My wife said something about there's rumors that they wouldn't let Trump into the Bahamas, was it, or Virgin Islands or something, where Donald J. Trump's son, Don Jr., that piece of shit, was getting married. But either way, Donald J. Trump on Truth Social, while I very much wanted to be with my son, Don Jr., and the newest member of the Trump family, his soon-to-be wife, Bettina. What the fuck kind of name is Bettina? Have you ever heard anybody called Bettina before? Bettina. Fucking Bettina. His soon-to-be wife, Bettina. Circumstances pertaining to my government, to government, and my love for the United States of America do not allow me to do so. I feel it is important for me to remain in Washington, D.C. at the White House during this important period of time. Congratulations to Don and Bettina, President Donald J. Trump. All right, so first of all, why would you get married in the Virgin Islands? Like you have fucking, places that would be better suited. I mean, there's supposed to be all these people that want to kill Trump, right? So why not go to Mar-a-Lago or any of the number of venues that you could have and get married in America? Because wouldn't having your dad be there, who's the president, be like kind of the big thing? Like he's the star of the show. So him coming to the wedding would be the big thing. And so you wouldn't plan it somewhere where you wouldn't know whether he'd be able to attend or not. I mean, you would coordinate with him because, fucking he's Donald J. Trump, and you're all fucking, I mean, God knows all the people they're going to have there, like in terms of name-dropping people. But, so that seems weird as fuck, right? And the other part is, let me ask ChatGTP. ChatGTP, how many times has Donald Trump golfed since the Iran war began? Working. He's golfed 14 fucking times. He's got, since the onset of the U.S.-Iran war in February 2026, President Donald J. Trump has played golf at least 14 times, including a round on March 8th, 2026, amid rising gas prices and the war's escalation. The frequent golf outings during the time of international conflict has drawn public criticism, with some questioning the appropriateness of such leisure activities during wartime. How many times has Donald Trump gone to Mar-a-Lago or one of his other clubs during the Iran war? We're waiting for, so, like, none of that shit makes sense. And, like, it's like a silly little fucking stupid thing. And what about Bettina? Like, what about Bettina? Bettina's the newest member of the family. Since the onset of 2026, February 2026, President Trump has visited Mar-a-Lago at least once on March 2020, and additionally has made 128 visits to Trump golf properties during his second term, including 59 to Mar-a-Lago. So the guy is clearly, all about his leisure time and this other, going to these places, and then all the travel that he does. I mean, when he's not doing that, he's just destroying the fucking country. But what about fucking Bettina? Like, what about her feelings? Apparently Bettina, I don't know this for sure. This is just, what I've heard. My wife told me, so this is, that her dad was a big fan of Jeffrey Epstein. Said he was a great guy, sort of like Donald J. Trump. So they've got that going on. But this whole thing seems fucking weird, just like everything else, right? So fuck Don Jr. and fuck Bettina, right? And the rest of these MNFers. So here's another one.
What is that?
All right. So there was a bunch of them before it. I just scrolled through them, and then the only one that came back up was him pooping. So, and then I clicked out of the Trump tweet about his not going to his son's wedding. This is great. So Trump went to New York, and I saw a few of the highlights. Hopefully I'll find these. I'm just going to randomly go through it. But he's unraveling hard here.
Give him a very special honor. The illegal aliens are all over the place. The people are getting shot left and right. The elections are rigged. They don't have voter ID. They don't
What's up?
have proof of citizenship. Think of it. We want to get the Save America Act passed now.
Yeah, let's get it passed. It's not passing. Woo! Are these people just all paid at this point? Look at this guy in his fucking Where's Waldo American flag shit.
Think of the Save America Act. It's voter ID. Who's against voter ID? You ever see the Democrat National Convention? I call it the Democrat. They're Democrats.
Oh, wow, it's so clever. The Democrats, I see what you did there. You're so fucking clever. You're so original. Where's what's that guy's name? What's Cantina? What's his new daughter-in-law?
But you ever see it? They have
what about Cantina?
cards on them for the Democrat National
Bettina was her name.
Convention. Cards like bigger than your chest. Name, address, everything you want to know about a person. They might even have a social security number on it. They have. That's to get into their convention. But for voting, you're allowed to go in.
It's just crazy how much hypocritical they are. All right, let me just go through here, find this random stuff here. All right, so continuing on, today's the next day. Today is Monday, whatever the day in July is. And it's not even July. We're going to talk about May 25th. Look, I'm losing my shit. All right, here we go.
You know why? Because their policies are dumb. Their policies are very dumb. All of that policies. Did you see they did an autopsy on why they lost the election? And they said you lost the election because of Trump, primarily. But
Is it really? Is that why? Is it because of Trump? So you're an expert in this thing. Like, you know, you got to be a complete dumb fuck to not know this guy's just bullshitting. Right? Like, he just goes up there and bullshits. Like, fact checking is, you know, the thing about it is, for this brief period of time, because this all collapses at some point. But, you know, they came up with this idea, Hillary Clinton, which was fake news. And fake news was anybody outside the mainstream media who was reporting shit. Like, that was their idea, how they could win people back by trying to label all of us, you know, the millions of people online who talk about politics and other things. And we're all fake news because we're not legitimized and not controlled. You know, and there's a lot of fake news, a lot of dumb fuck stuff out here. But, you know, it's not fake, it's realer than, you know, the controlled media. But Trump then hijacked the term fake news. He started using it for CNN and all the rest of them, you know, disempowering them. And, you know, to dumb fucks who started to, you know, the truth community, as far as I knew it, when I watched Truthers, it was smart people. You know, they might have gotten some things wrong. You know, they didn't have the spiritual thing that I have, you know, here, whatever. But they were interesting to listen to. And I don't know, like I knew there was some real dumb stuff out there, remedial stuff, you know, like just for double-digit IQ people. But that was not the main thing, and there wasn't fake, you know, disinformation yet. Like there weren't disinformation agents. They didn't know yet what to do with it, so they didn't have these just out and out, just, you know, bot. Of course, there was no bots or AI back then. I'm talking about in, you know, 2005, 6, 7, you know, these years. So it was a lot better. Like, it's a lot better than what you're getting now, just like everything else has been degraded. But, you know, there's more people doing it, so there's more, you know, there's a pathway for people to do this, make a living at it, so there's more people doing it, and so there's going to be some better people, right? The top end's going to be elevated, and there's going to be a lot of bullshit in the middle, and there's just a lot of dumb shit at the bottom. But, you know, that's what happened. And Trump came in. Now he has Truth Social. Like, he's a truther, and he's a piece of shit. Like, he's hijacked our shit, right? And so fuck this guy. Fuck him more than the rest of them. Like, all these pieces of shit, these politicians. Because he's taken our thing and tried to, you know, make it. Like, you know, and he has nothing to do with it. He's the opposite. He's a fucking, you know, he's an elitist taint licker his whole life, trying to be part of a club, and he doesn't give a shit about real people and the fact that, you know, that average people are better than the elite. The elite are the lowest of the low. There are some higher developed souls, or older souls, you know, older in the sense of more time on planet Earth, that are stuck in, you know, that have gone in a deviant path or demonic. So they're, you know, they seem like they're more evolved because they're smart and they're, you know, they have some time here, but they're trapped. They're not, you know, there's people who have only one life. You know, this is their first life, and they don't have the ability for abstract thought or whatever it might be. But they're, you know, they haven't been corrupted yet, so they're still better off than the elite. The elite have to uncorrupt themselves and basically go back to the beginning and work their way back up. You know, because they've gone on, they're demonic. Their egos have hijacked their soul's path, and they're locked into planet Earth, and they're caught in this power dynamic. Instead of, you know, having one life as a powerful and rich person and saying, oh yeah, this isn't it, I got to find my real path. They get stuck in it, life after life, coming back and, you know, being a part of this cabal and, you know, whatever, deviant souls from different places. But the people who run the system are the worst, most of them. You know, some of them are just playing a role for, you know, this period of time, and then they can, you know, have a spiritual life or whatever, but most of them aren't. And so people who look up to them, thinking that they have, because they have power and money and these things, are like, they're just caught up in bullshit material. The earthly way of looking at success, right? The way that you should look at success is, are you doing what your soul wants you to do, and are you contributing something to the, to God's work? I mean, that's true success, and everything else is just spinning in circles, and people giving themselves awards like the Academy Awards, and the acting industry, the movie industry, patting itself on the back. These medals of honor and awards and statues, they don't mean shit, right? They're like silly. You have, whatever you take with you when you die, and most of that's going to be mistakes and ill-begotten gains and things, and you have to pay for those things in your next existence. But anyways, he hijacked this thing, and he's got these dumb fucks who just listen to him because they're incapable. Like, how can you believe this guy to be,
Then Trump, you lost the election because you had crappy candidates and you had bad policy, and they didn't know how to speak properly, and they weren't smart people, and various other reasons. They spent $10 million for the autopsy. It was called an autopsy. And they had typos. Jackson, they had typos in every other sentence. They had misspelled words. They had commas in the wrong location. They gave him $10 million for the autopsy.
All right, so there's a guy out there who used to work for Trump in his pageants, and he used to work in the live season-ending shows on The Apprentice. He handled talent, and he's a comedian. He has a blog, and he came out and he said shit like Trump shit his pants, during various, like he had all these things. But he talked about Trump being dyslexic, which I hope he's not, because but that might be a thing. And people with dyslexia, I mean, there's very successful people with dyslexia in terms of the material world, and also spiritual people who see or have pattern recognition. It's a different way of seeing the world. But we're not good with fucking spelling and just, grammatical things. Like, people with dyslexia need other people to come along and clean things up. Just because, right? That's this, everyone knows it. I mean, the word dyslexia starts with 4 fucking consonants. It's a big fuck you to people with dyslexia. Those of us who are, gifted with this condition or whatever, blessed with this condition. And I don't know whether he has it or not, but Trump is fucking. But he used to talk about how Trump did not like 3-syllable words when the thing came out. And the guy went a little bit overboard, and I don't know if he said Trump was addicted to Adderall and things, and believable, but not necessarily true. But I mean, Trump talking about this thing like he is the, there's people who are grammar police. And Trump is their worst nightmare. Like, Trump is just sloppy in everything that he does.
Autopsy. I could have given him the autopsy without any charge at all. I said, you had one candidate named Sleepy Joe Biden. What's a better name? Sleepy Joe Biden or Crooked Joe Biden? Ready? Who likes Sleepy Joe Biden? Who likes Crooked Joe Biden? About pretty similar. They're both pretty good.
Who in here has a triple-digit IQ? Crickets. Holy fuck.
Who likes Crooked Hillary? Oh, she's good.
So really, you use crooked a lot. He said, who likes Crooked Hillary? And they all went, yay. We like her.
Anyone. But we have another problem because we have the great law enforcement. I met a lot of your law enforcement back there.
All right, so let me go to the next thing. I know there's some stuff in here I'm going to miss. But you see, he's like, his level, his narcissism and his braggadocious nature has gone up, and his cognitive level has gone down. Like, since he campaigned for president. And he just doesn't give a fuck anymore because he's not really running. But when he gets hammered in the midterms, apparently Ted Cruz, that I just saw this, I'm not gonna go into it, is hammering this $1.8 billion bailout. And so for whatever reason, all the Republicans have decided to go after Trump about this bailout for January 6th people. And for all the bullshit that Trump's pulled, now you're going to take a stand against him? Because the powers that be have told them to do that and to turn on him for whatever reason. And, I don't know whether because it's the midterms or they're all trying to distance themselves from him like it's coming around the corner. I don't know if it's because the bullshit he pulled with Thomas Massey. I don't know if any, who knows. But somebody told them, all right, fuck Trump. And like he's fucked now. There's going to be, I mean, he's going to get hammered in the midterms. I'd be shocked if that didn't happen. It always happens. And then he's done. He has no power. Like his power has been, and he's got a dwindling amount of people who, when he's gone, they're not going to be there for anybody. The MAGA people are going to be, they're cannibalizing themselves right now. Like they're going after each other. It's no longer a unified group. And they're not going to come back together in 2028 to back a candidate. They're going to be infighting. It's going to be a fucking shit show. I can't wait to watch those fucking primaries, if those things even exist at that point. But either way, this guy is a fucking, I mean, he's an absolute fucking joke. Okay, so this is, what is her, Bettina. Fucking Cantina. I think that Don Jr. is, I don't know, she looks taller than him here and less tall there, but she's a big girl. And she looks a little dudeish and a little bit like a Cantina. And like this picture here, like look at that shit, right? A little bit like Melania. And, just whatever. I mean, Don Jr. is a piece of shit. She can't be worse than him. And here it is. I asked about Bettina and Jeffrey Epstein. And the connection, Epstein, her dad, who, whatever his name is, her name is, whatever it is, there's the thing, and then it says something about her dad here. Harry Loy Anderson. Connection to the name Epstein. Family reference. Her father once provided a character reference for Jeffrey Epstein, describing him as a gentleman of the highest integrity. A social circus of Palm Beach socialite. Her family moved in the same circles as a late financier. So I meant to do this. I meant to lead with this morning. I'm just going to do it now because I was talking about Cantina or Bettina. This weird shit. But, this is how this family is, right? She's a rich girl from the Palm Beach circle, and dad loved Jeffrey Epstein. So, yeah, let's do that. Let's have that. Let's bring this into your family. So here it is.
Person. You'll never hear me call myself I'm the smartest guy you're ever going to meet.
I'm the smartest guy you're ever going to meet. No smart person would ever say that, right? No smart person would ever say that. Like, he is smarter than his fucking audience. Like, I went through this. So, there are, I was pretty stunned to go through if you have an IQ over 120, you're in the 90th percentile, right? And so if, the average person, the 100 IQ is the average. And so people who are, there's 50% of the people that are less than 100 IQ. And IQ tests aren't, they're not the barometer of consciousness. There's people who have like 200 IQ, but they're clueless. Like they have they're almost like computers. They have poor heart development. They're not spiritually evolved. They have low consciousness, but they have a great brain. And so an IQ isn't a good barometer, but it's a way that, people define intelligence in, America. But you can see people like you who are just, they have a different level of perception. Like, and some people are just great. Like, my wife and I were trying to change the belt on our lawnmower. And, I have like mechanical abilities, and some things are just out of my capacity. And I couldn't find a proper video on it. It was a whole thing, and I was kind of tired and worried, just whatever it was fucking raining. But, like there's people who just understand mechanical things, and you just, I meet people all the time who, I see are better at something that I'll never be as good as them at that, right? And so, like, you have different things, different learning styles, different ways of expressing intelligence, but you have people who are just sort of, there's a wisdom to them. They They're, they see things, they get it, right? Like they understand life on a different level. And Trump isn't one of those people. Trump panders to dumb people. So if you're a Trumper, you gotta understand how fucking stupid you are. All politicians, if you worship one of these politicians, and you might be young and you're stupid because you're in college and some liberal candidate comes around and, all the people, whatever. But as you're an older person, you got to realize that they're all fucking corrupt. They've been corrupt for a very long time, and all these guys, politics is not a good thing. It doesn't work, right? But for him to say he's the smartest guy you'll ever meet, he's not smart. Like, smart people know. We know this guy's a dumb fuck, right? He's good at manipulating dumb people, right? His message is dumbed down. All these speeches are for dumb people. That's why he's a WWE candidate, right? Woo!
And don't you want to have a smart person as president?
They're applauding because they're stupid. Like, yeah, you are the smartest guy you're ever going to meet. Really? You think he's that? Well, holy shit. Like, how fucking stupid are you? Have you never met a fucking smart person your whole life? Right?
You want to have a smart person. In fact, I took the cognitive test. I'm the only one.
The cognitive test and you couldn't pronounce the word. I'm the only one. He's the only one who's ever taken the cognitive test, right? This thing.
Office. I'm the smartest guy you're ever going to meet.
Woo! Woo! Yeah, woo! Woo.
And don't you want to have a smart person as president?
Woo! Yeah, that would make sense. Woo! Yeah, woo!
In fact, I took the cognitive test. I'm the only one. They call me, originally they said, he's brilliant. He wants to take over the entire country. Then they said, no. He wants the world. He doesn't want the country. That's why he's in Iran. That's why he's in... Hey, by the way, how did we do in Venezuela? Not bad. That's why he's in... we've taken out so much oil in Venezuela, we paid for the cost of the war about 25 times over. When did you hear that last?
When would you hear that? That was a war, even though it lasted one day and they put up no resistance. But, this thing we're doing in Iran's an excursion.
It's a one-way street. But no, the doctor, I said, doctor, let me ask you a question. They called me genius, and that didn't work. Then they said he's totally brilliant. He's a vicious dictator who wants to take over. That didn't work. And then they called me this, and then they said, they hit me with a bad one. He's a dumb person. D-U-M, not the B. He's a dumb person. It's enough. Most people don't know it has a B. He's a dumb person.
Most people don't know it has a B. Like, fucking, you're saying that most people, more than 50% of the people can't spell the word dumb with a silent B. Well, it doesn't even silent. Fucking, let's run my Fred Sanford meme here.
You big cold-blooded dummy. You big dummy, 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 dummy.
I said, doctor, I don't mind being called a brilliant, total tyrant dictator, but I don't want to be called dumb.
He said this before, so this came up, right? And I was like, oh, this is old, but it's just he's repeating verbatim stuff, but he's doing it even worse. He doesn't mind being called a dictator. A smart person wouldn't say that.
What do I do, doctor? Is there some kind of a test I can take? He said, actually, sir, there is. It's a cognitive test.
Okay, so people were calling you dumb, and you're not specifying what people are calling you dumb. You liked it when they called you smartest dictator, but then when you started calling you dumb, you said to a doctor, some random doctor, hey, doc, is there a test I can take to prove everyone I'm not dumb? Yeah, well, you failed the test, bro, because that's what a dumb person would do. A person in public office, you're going to get called everything, right? Like, everyone knows this. Or, any of us who is out here, you're going to, look at the comment section of any person who's, got a following and an audience. You're going to have people who don't like you, and they're going to call you names. And, you're going to be called stupid. I've been called stupid probably 10,000 times in one way or another. People have tried to mock me. And, I never once said to them, or I never once said, went to a doctor and said, hey, doc, People are calling me stupid. Can I take a test to prove them wrong? Right?
I said, how many presidents have taken it? None. You know this story. No people have taken it. I said, well, is it good or bad? Is it tough? It's a tough test. It starts off easy. It gets very, very tough. I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take that test, I think, doctor.
I'm going to take that test, even though no one other presidents never took such a test. It's a tough test. I'm going to take a tough test, show everybody I'm not a dumb fuck like people are saying.
I do good on tests. I'm going to take that test, and let's see how we do. He said, here's the problem, sir. If you do badly on the test, it's going to be reported because it's Walter Reed Medical Hospital. It's a military hospital. It's sort of public. So you have 5 doctors sitting there, and they're all... If you do badly on it, sir, and you could do badly because, you know...
You are pretty dumb, fucker. You are pretty fucking retarded.
Questions are very easy at the beginning, then pretty easy, then pretty hard. By the time you get to the end, there are not a lot of people in the room can get them, believe me. I said, well...
You know, it's not that kind of a test, right? This isn't like these... All right, so he doesn't even understand a cognitive test. And like, first of all, there's a guy out there that... There's a video, which I've shown before. I have a copy I saved. It's no use at this point. But you can find it. I'm on MS Now. And there's a doctor who worked with Parkinson's. Remember, there was a Parkinson's doctor that went to the White House like 8 times. And they were like, oh, my God, he's going there for Joe Biden. So they said it was some Marine who was standing guard. And the guy had Parkinson's. And I'm like, why would you have a fucking guy with Parkinson's standing guard? And so MS Now, MSNBC back then, some random guy brought this reporter on. I mean, this doctor who was a Parkinson's doctor. And the guy said, and he explained how Joe Biden had Parkinson's and differential diagnosis between Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, right? And so it was, very conclusive. Like working with that, because I used to administer psychological tests, assessment tests, right? I did psychological assessments because I have a master's in counseling. And, stuff is revealed. And you just, in terms of that model of looking at things, like I don't even like that model. There's some truth in it, but, the DSM-5, right? But, the Parkinson's stuff, like a lot of times the doctors will just, you go in there and they're limited to their model, right? So, I'm not even a big fan of all that, but Parkinson's is a thing. It's a real, it's a known, disease or whatever you call it. And he explained why Joe Biden had Parkinson's, and there's no doubt about it. And the guy went on and said, Trump, they say Trump has taken this test, the reporter asked. He goes, yeah, the test Trump took is a remedial test. It's not a real test. The test that I would give him or any of these people is 5 hours long. And it's extensive, but it's not looking to see how smart you are. Like him taking a cognitive test isn't about how smart he is. It's how your brain is deteriorating, right? It's your ability for, cognition. It's not anything to do with intelligence. And a lot of it's like recall. They'll tell you something and then they'll ask you a follow-up question 10 minutes later and see if you remembered what they said to you. It's shit like that, right? It's about how well your brain's working and how well your cognitive abilities. It has nothing to do with your IQ. It's not a test to prove if you're fucking dumb or not, right? And so he doesn't even understand the test. And he was given a shitty one. But he talks about it all the time because he gets stuff like this, and no one's going to fact check him because, they do fact check him, but none of these people are going to listen to anybody fact check him. And what are these dumb fucks who are listening to him going to say when he's fact checked? I got another comment where it's a similar one to the one, but their big one is to say, you have TDS. And so, they're caught in this fucking cult-like loop. It's not it's a cult of Trump. They believe this guy is smart and they believe this guy is good. And anybody who says otherwise has got a fucking disorder, right?
It will be public, won't it? It'll be embarrassment, but let's do it. This was in my first term. I took it and I aced it. And
you don't ace a cognitive test, right?
They had tough questions.
Woo!
So the first question was, you have a bear, a snake, an elephant, and a horse. Name the horse. That's the horse. The second question's a little tough, and then he goes, so the New York Times does a story to show the test that I just aced, and they only used the first question. They didn't go into the other questions.
Okay, what was the toughest question you answered? Explain the toughest question. You know, it sounds like they gave you a test a little kid would take. Right?
Didn't go in. But toward the end, like they had a question like, pick a number, sir, any number. Okay, 203. Multiply times 9, divide by 2, add on 1,324, subtract 1,292. Sir, multiply it out one more time by 19. What is the answer, sir? And I got it right.
You got it right. What is the answer then? Like you got it right. Just do that again right now for us, because I know you can't do that. Like you know. And again, this is not a fucking test to show your mathematical abilities. Some people have the ability to do that. Some people are mathematical geniuses. They have these idiot savants who could just tell you the number. But the majority of us can't do that. Don't have the capacity mathematically. And that has nothing to do with your cognitive abilities, because this is like, they didn't give him that question, but then what's the answer, motherfucker? Right? Like, let's do it. Someone should ask him that very same question. You took all right, let's show you if you can still do that. Because he can't do that. Like, he doesn't have that kind of a brain. He's good at his one superpower is that he can grift dumb fucks. Woo! What's the answer?
And the one doctor said, I've been doing this test for 20 years. I've never seen anybody ace it. So then what happened?
It's not, they don't get a grade on it. Like, it's your cognitive abilities.
That was in my first term, and that quieted people down. That was good. And
they wouldn't call me dumb anymore.
What happened, I did it twice in my second term. So I've taken it, and I've aced it all 3 times, I'll tell you, because it is a positive thing, positive. Nice to be smart. But
nice to be smart.
But remember, I said, and I made the statement, all presidents and vice presidential candidates should be forced to take a cognitive test and a test on intelligence. And I said it loud. Obama couldn't do well on it. Biden wouldn't even get the first question.
Again, how do you know that? Like, of course, Biden, we all know with Biden. But again, the cognitive test is different than a IQ test. And Obama's younger than you guys. And did J.D. Vance do this? So, they don't want to institute this thing because the reality is this guy's going senile. Joe Biden already did, and we know Reagan did too. And the people who run the system don't want to have to change presidents because the president's senile. And in fact, they want a senile president so they can just manage him. Like they're managing Trump. Trump doesn't know half the shit that's going on. He's not curious. He doesn't have a curious mind. He gets bored, he talks about, when they're talking about shit. Like, he doesn't listen to his briefings. And so Joe Biden had the auto pen. Trump is the auto pen, right? Trump likes doing this. He likes to talk to dumb fucks and get applause and get, a friendly crowd. This is what Trump likes about being a politician.
You get that right. Which is the bear? Which is the horse? No, what'd he get?
All right, so I'm going to go through Twitter and ask about this thing because there were some other gaffes he made. He's in New York State. I'll see what else there is here. But Jesus Christ. Okay, so on top of him saying that because people who we wouldn't name called him dumb with a B, he said, "Hey doctor, you got a test to prove that I'm not dumb?" So aside from what I just showed you with that, I guess there were some protests here in the beginning.
Go home to mom. Go home.
Burn. Go home to mom. What a burn. Ooh, look at these dumb fucks.
Go home to mom.
And they start chanting USA, right? I want to get into this because I got another comment that's, a comment that's similar to the Trump derangement syndrome.
Take him home to mommy. He's going to be in trouble. You know what he doesn't say is his mom's watching on television right now and she's loving it. Anyway.
Yeah, all right. He doesn't say that? Are you going to do an interview with him? And so this is your fucking piece of shit president. Okay, so he goes on from there. He starts talking about transgender stuff, but then he comes back around to this dude.
Whatever happened to that guy? It's so quick. I don't know. I tell people, please don't do it. It's dangerous.
I tell all these people that hate me and think I'm stupid, please don't do it. It's dangerous. I mean, we have coffee, and I tell them, hey, don't do this. Don't come to my rally and do this. It's dangerous.
To do it in this crowd is not a good thing.
I mean, with all these violent morons that support me, all these dumb motherfuckers and with guns and fucking poor tempers and inability to perceive what's going on around with them, you don't fucking want to do shit like that.
You don't want to do it in Trump crowds. I've had very little. Do you remember originally? I used to have a lot of that. The first.
How the Republicans are always bragging about how when things don't go their way, they don't react like the George Floyd people, meaning blacks basically or whatever. Like they always brag, the Republicans. Remember, this was what Erica Kirk was saying. When Charlie was shot, they didn't go nuts like the fucking Black Lives Matter and the Antifa and the liberals. But, it's not the same thing. But Trump here is saying that his crowd's violent. If you come and you protest, which is your fucking freedom of speech, that his people don't believe in freedom of speech. That's why they say dumb fuck things like, oh, you have Trump derangement syndrome. You're mentally ill. We get to beat the shit out of you if you come to the not that I would say protests suck. It's stupid. Like I don't, I mean, I don't believe in it. I think it's a stupid thing to do. But it's your freedom of speech, and they don't believe in it. Neither does Trump, right? And so,
a couple of months, I'd have people screaming, and they learned it's just not a good thing to do. It's not good. It's sort of dangerous. And of course, I like things that aren't dangerous. I don't like to see people get whacked. I don't like it. So don't do it. But we used to have it all the time. My first month or two, oh boy, guys would start screaming, we hate you. And then all of a sudden it got less, and now it never happens. That's the first time it's happened in a long time. That's the first time it's happened in a long time. If the Democrats gain power, they'll take these deductions and tax cuts away. They'll raise your taxes, and they'll...
He's gonna come back to it here.
I'll tell you what, all my life, I went through life watching politics. I love politics, always watched. I never thought I'd be a politician. Can you believe I'm a politician? I hate the sound of it. But remember that, although I had a good night the other night, right? We knocked out a bad senator from Louisiana. We knocked out Massey, one of the worst Republican congressmen ever.
Okay, these stupid motherfuckers. Just fucking brain dead people. So there's that. But here, he's going to come back around to this. So, he can't stay on task. He's all over the place. Like he was supposed to be talking about where the fuck he was talking about here. And then he starts talking about Massey. And there's another thing here.
And they voted against making interest payments on your auto loans tax deductible. That's what you have if it's made in America. So, we have another little disturbance back there. Hello. Hello, everybody. That's okay. It's already cleared up. What are you doing back there to these people? Boy, does that get cleared up fast. The guy raises his hand, starts screaming something, and within about 2 seconds, it's over. I don't know. What happened to him? Don't hurt him. Don't hurt him. Don't hurt him. I do that for legal reasons. This way I can say.
So, this is him encouraging his crowd to beat the shit out of people. And, and these dumb fucks don't realize, I mean, Trump's not going to be there for them if it goes south on him. Just like he wasn't there for the January 6th people when he turned on them, right? Trump turns on everybody. You go do something you think you're doing in Trump's name. He's, if something comes back to him, he'll throw you under the bus in a second. And he's putting you in legal jeopardy. You beat the shit out of somebody, that's a crime. You're in fucking New York, a very democratic state, liberal state. If you beat the shit out of someone of his protesters and a person presses charges, and what, Trump's going to pardon you? Like fucking, is he going to do that? Is he going to pardon somebody who assaults of somebody who is yelling at his thing? And so he's encouraging his people to do something. He's not going to back them up. He's encouraging this violence and this rhetoric, and he's I just saying this for legal reasons. I mean, I don't mean anything I'm saying. Like fucking
Great thing to say. Do not hurt him under any circumstances. And now I can say I'm innocent. They voted against the Trump accounts, which provide automatic.
I mean, the guy's just an absolute piece of shit. And these motherfuckers, these dumb motherfuckers, don't know he's selling them out every possible way. I mean, just he's a selfish, fucking narcissistic, fragile, egoed person who can't take this little smallest bit of criticism, right, or anything. Like just the idea that people don't believe in him as the greatest guy in the world. They're saying I'm dumb. Well, can you give me a test just so I can show them I'm wrong? That they're wrong. All right, let's go to the comments. All right, so I'm going to look at the other comments in a second, see if there's anything else. But this is the one I wanted to get to. The person writes, Orange Man is bad. And I've seen this comment before, and I, assumed it was them basically another way of saying TDS, right? And here is an explanation. Orange Man is bad. A statement used to mock the critics of American politician Donald Trump, implying they only oppose him because it's popular to do so, or because of lack of clear understanding of their own political beliefs. Now, nobody would say that about me, right? So there's substance in this thing. People will say that I make too long videos, or they complain about the length of the videos, or the long form content. But long form content, I'm telling you exactly what I believe. And I've said this since the beginning with Trump. And I've been right about everything. I've been right about everything about Trump. There's nothing I've said that hasn't been true. Because I knew what the kind of guy he was back when he was an apprentice. Like, I can read people's character. I used to do psychological assessments and the spiritual work that a preceptor does, and being introverted. And I'm interested in what makes people tick. Like, some people don't care, but I'm interested in why decisions are made. Like, what goes through somebody's mind when they make a decision. Like, that stuff's always fascinated me in various ways. Not just with people, with animals, right? What makes them do what makes, creature do what it does, right? And I'm more of a friend to these dumb fucks than Trump is. Like, someone needs to tell them they're dumb fucks. I'm sure there's plenty of people in their life has told them that, and they just have never been able to figure out that they're right, right? They just, they don't get it, right? They're not, you don't have the capacity for critical thinking. Like, this is beyond you. You're not capable of being a truther. Like, if you're still on Trump, then you're not capable of being a truther. And if you compromise, like Tucker Carlson, his gay brother, Bucky, if you compromise, you knew Trump was a piece of shit, but you liked what he was saying, so you went along with him anyway, right? Like, if you're a Southern person, a Christian, Southern Christian, and you would never watch The Apprentice, because The Apprentice was more of a liberal show. I mean, I don't know who watched The Apprentice to break down demographics, but it wasn't for NASCAR dads. It wasn't for Southern people, Christian people, rural people, like Midwestern Christian right-wing Republicans. That wasn't the demographic. Liberal people, rappers used to love Trump, right? Rappers, used to reference Trump in various rap songs, and Trump was like a liberal person. He was a New York businessman, liberal in his many of his beliefs, certainly sexual beliefs and things like that. Not a person that ever talked about God, not a person who ever read the Bible. And then all of a sudden he became a Republican, and he started to say outrageous things that appealed to right-wing people. And then he saw that those people liked it, and he just went farther. He just kind of leaned into it. And he leaned into the truth community. He was never a truther. And so he never gave a shit about you. He's not one of you. He cares about fucking rich people. He cares about people like him or people above him. He cares about rich and famous people. These beautiful people he talks about, right? He doesn't care about these other people, right? These kind of, there's a story I heard the other day. There was the guy, comedian John Mulaney, and he was being interviewed by this other comedian. I can't remember his name. But John Mulaney said he's envious of this guy's story about Frank Sinatra. And he wants the guy to work it into his act, right? He's another comedian. And the guy tells a story, and they're both cracking up through the whole thing. And he talks about how he goes to Buffalo, New York to see his aunt. And he asks her if she ever, thought about being a celebrity or ever went to concerts or whatever. And she said, well, we went to Frank Sinatra. So she's an older woman. Back when we were teenagers. And we went in and we saw him as he was getting out and going into his limousine. And they said, Frank, we love you. You're great. And he gets into the car and he yells out the window, get out of the way, you fat pigs. And these are teenage girls in the 70s. They were, obesity wasn't a thing, so they were probably, And he said, he's joking. He's like, and they're still fans of him today. Like that didn't dissuade them from being fans. And that's like what Trump is, right? Like he looks down on his audience, but he likes the applause. He likes, he likes what they do for him, but he's not willing to do anything for you. He's not willing, for any of these people. And so it's very clear by now that that's the case. And everybody who was on Trump should have known this. Like, you got to think of yourself as, like, weak in terms of your character, weak in terms of any number of things that made you go along with it, right? But these guys who still are saying TDS or Orange Man bad, like, you can't hear the truth. Like, you're incapable. So what the fuck are you doing here? You don't belong here. You don't belong here where people have to take a critical look at themselves first and everything else. I mean, if you don't think you have to change, then you're not a truther. Right? There's nothing in here for you to learn that that you've been duped and fooled, and you've gone along with things because of your own prejudices or your own bullshit fucking mental construct. Then you don't belong here. I'm certainly not on my channel, but really in the truth community altogether. You're just a sheeple walking around thinking that you're not. Like, and it's just you're the worst kind of sheeple. Like, that's the shit that sheeple say. Yeah, you got Trump derangement syndrome. You disagree with us. You can't even understand what other people are saying about you. Because if you could, you'd feel ashamed and embarrassed and like fucking would want to crawl into a hole that you're that much of a dumb fuck. Like, you'd go into a place and never be able to come back out if you saw yourself the way we see you, right? So it's just pathetic. Orange man bad. Orange man bad. And so anyways. Okay, so here's a great comment. One part is great. I wasn't going to read it. Hey, mate. I think this guy must be from Australia or England. Keep trolling as you do. I fell asleep the other night getting an ASMR vibe from your words and dulcet tones. It was great. In parentheses, P.S. I'm not gay. Well, I didn't think that. I guess dulcet tones would. It comes from the transmission, right? Like, it's funny because there's people who complain. There's people who speed up my videos. Like, they speed up, the whatever, the audio. YouTube has that ability, which wrecks the whole transmission aspect of it. And there's a few people who mocked me for it, but in real life, I speak very fast. And when I was in India, I recognized I was talking to people, Indian people, who were interested in what I was saying, but they couldn't understand. Now, there was, they speak English, British English in India, not American English. And, there's lots of people that speak English in India, but they didn't necessarily understand a word I was saying. And I recognized, and I said to one guy, did you understand what I was saying? He said, I got about a third of it. And this guy lived in America for a while because I talk very fast. I get sped up, and I'm an impatient person. Like, as I've gotten older, it's gotten better. But I was used to play board games or card games with my parents, and I would end up making their moves for them because I couldn't wait for them to fucking figure it out. And my dad used to joke that they should just be cardboard figures because it was, they would just take fucking forever for obviously there was a simple move anyway. But I realized this, so I started slowing down my speech when I talk differently when I'm talking here. Like, I slow down the way I talk. That's why I wouldn't do interviews or something like that, because just in my when I'm having natural conversations, plus I react to other people's energy and consciousness. But anyhow, in the Sajmark system, the transmission comes through any kind of an audio when you're talking to somebody who does the system. If you meditate and do the system, the transmission comes through and people respond to it. That's why, I get frustrated when people don't want to try it. And I'm like, you're benefiting from it already. Like everyone who listens to this and feels a sense of peace and calm from what they're thinking is my voice, it's because the transmission comes through anybody who does the system. Like if you do the practice, it'll come through you. It'll, when people are in your presence, they'll feel the vibration, right? But people don't want to do it. They don't try it. They don't, it's something you have to work at, but like, whatever. Like I talked about this earlier. Anyways, the person writes, P.S. I'm not gay. Meanwhile, read the heartburn thing. Had it for ages and a bunch of other stuff. I got a simple suggestion from an earthly friend to massage all muscles across the chest. Holy shit, what a difference. Can't believe it. I don't even know where the muscles are, but they control so much of the CF, C4 up in digestive stuff. Incredible to go. Sue's for a long comment. Love your work, X. I don't have heartburn so much. Like I have acid reflux, which I take digestive enzymes. I take more acid, and that helps. It helps me digest the food. But like I was eating too much. I don't know, and it just is post-COVID. I want to get into that more when let me go through the rest of these comments and see if there's anything else I want to address. Somebody writes this. Is it Sajmarg that you're referring to? And they wrote the term out correctly. Kudos for spelling it right. It's Sajmarg. I've studied practice spirituality several years and I've never heard the term. Would like to research it. Well, the best place to research it is here. Because there's a website which is now owned by Heartfulness, right? I was just thinking this today. Like, there was the first four masters. Lalaji was the first master. He was named Ramchandra. And his disciple Babaji was also named Ramchandra. So they call it the Sri Ramchandra mission. Lalaji died. He wrote a handful of essays, essays and things about spirituality that fucking most of us who did the practice for years really didn't understand. Like, it's just so technical and, ancient Indian stuff. Like, he had said to his successor that people that came to him wanted liberation, freedom of being able to graduate from Earth. And the people that were coming to Babaji just wanted peace. Like, there had been a degradation where people were just, the craving for spirituality had diminished a lot in a place where spiritual people are born. That people go to India to be, you incarnate in India if you're a spiritual person, at least, or you end up there somehow or another. And so the third master system, and Babaji and Lalaji were both clerks. And they both had rich fathers who lost their money. And then they had simple jobs as a court clerk in a courtroom. And Charji, the third master, he was Brahmin and he lived in South India. The other two lived in Northern India. And he kind of created the mission. Charji was a businessman, a salesman, and he was well educated. Babaji quit school when he was in about 7th or 8th grade because he wanted to be an original thinker. And he brought the system, to the various countries. I mean, he traveled with Babaji, who used to bring Charji to communicate with people from foreign countries because Babaji's English was just okay. And he talked more like Yoda, like people didn't understand him. But the fourth guy, Daji, was a pharmacist in New York, and he created this parasitic organization called Heartfulness. And now they're calling him the founder of Heartfulness. But they want Sajmarg people to still do the system, even though he's taken this thing and turned it into like a holding company to get the properties. His sons were involved in a insurance scam in New York. They were indicted. They're hiding out in India. It was a whole fucked up thing that happened. Just destroyed the system. And so, the Sajmarg website's still there, but the website was not really good. There's a Sajmarg YouTube channel that has Charji, and he, a lot of things that he talks about I explain here. But he's the best reference, his videos. But other than that, you're not going to find anything. There's a couple of people out there who had, they're disgruntled people that have anti-Sajmarg blogs. And actually, they get information that some of us don't have access to. One guy is his wife got divorced him, and he blamed the method. But I know why she divorced him. I read his blog. I know exactly why she divorced him. But anyways, there's not really a lot of information out there on the internet, and it's not that many people know about it. In terms of Americans who are not Indian, who are not born Indian, they're not Indian. There was probably 1,000 or so people who practiced. Not even that, and a lot of those people quit, and certainly even now. And most of those are boomer hippies, and some of them are better than others, but there just isn't a lot of information out there on the system. You can find the books though. You can buy books, and there's 5 books that are PDF files that you can find. Sajmarg books, the complete works of Ramchandra, and there's his sons, Babaji's sons, the second master. They started their own thing, and they kind of there's a lot of bullshit stuff that went on, but they have published his books as well, and so you can find these PDF books. Now, if you go to Gratefullness Meditation, I think I have links to them somewhere in one of the playlists. But really, I'm the best resource for this because, all these other people are either compromised or they just don't understand it, or, obviously the masters of the system if you get their literature. But in terms of an American person that you can can communicate in your language, like I'm the only person that can do that, for the most part. If you have a preceptor, some of these preceptors, people go to these preceptors, but now they're all compromised because they're doing dodgy heartfulness thing. But some of the preceptors were great people, and they could talk to you about it too, whatever. But if you're looking for like oppositional stuff, like truth or stuff about it, there are a couple blogs out there. But I know all the people. I know of the people who did the blogs, and they're just disgruntled people, and there was no. I mean, they exaggerate or make up shit that, for the most part. Like that guy blames his wife leaving him on the Sajmarg meditation. But Charji was the most person he said the only reason you can get divorced if somebody is blocking your spiritual evolution. If somebody's hurting your spiritual evolution, then you can get divorced. Otherwise, again, there's no rules in Sajmarg, but that was his suggestion. Like, just because you're unhappy doesn't mean you get to get divorced. If that person is helping you with your spiritual evolution, even if like my ex, to a large extent, she was helping me through cleaning, the difficulties that I went through that marriage, helped me. But, mercifully, like I didn't do anything to make the divorce happen. Whatever. Like I asked for it, but, she was already living with another dude, so that was whatever, which I was grateful for. I mean, that was a blessing. But anyways, so there's that. Okay, so I went through comments. A bunch of people were making comments about my health stuff, or people have gone through similar things. And I meant to say this in the beginning of the video. There is a playlist that I made, because I talked to my wife about this. And it's a playlist of videos, and I'm going to include this one on it. That are to be watched if I should just die or disappear. Like I just stop posting or whatever. For people who need some, whatever it is, some closure. And, it's like a goodbye message kind of thing, whatever. There's one video particularly I made, and I thought I would make more, and I probably will. Or a lot of these I'll just include that I have stuff about my, health and then thoughts about this. But, I never thought about dying unless, like, when I fell out of a tree or fell off a zip line and woke up in the hospital, like, that already had happened. But there are times that I almost was in a car accident. There's times in your life where you almost die, where you were like, oh my God, I could have died, or, somebody else could have died. I mean, something happens where you're like, that was lucky, right? Something really bad could have happened, right? And you are aware of your own mortality, but you don't think about it other than that when you're young. People who get a diagnosis. I remember I went to like a doc. I hadn't been to a doctor in years. I was like 25 years old. And, he said, "You want to take an HIV test?" And I'm like, "No, not really." And I'm like, "All right, what the hell?" And then I took the test, and there was zero chance of me getting it. Like, there was just no way. But I remember like being like nervous. I'm like, what if I have AIDS, right? Like that'd be sucky, Of course I didn't because there was no way I would have gotten it. But it became a reality, right? You don't think about getting the AIDS or any of these things. I mean, when I first heard about COVID, I didn't think I was going to get it, and I was one of the first batch of people that got it. I got it in early March. Before, I mean, I was like barely. It just had become a thing, and I was like, holy shit! I was walking around, I couldn't fucking breathe, and I was like, why can't I breathe? It never happened to me like that. Like I just couldn't breathe. I was having trouble breathing, and I was like, holy shit! I went and checked the COVID symptoms, and I had all of them. I was like, holy fuck, how'd that happen? Like I've been social isolating for fucking like 20 years. I barely interact with people. The guy who was building our barn's wife picked it up at a hospital, and he got it, and I talked to him, and later on he said, he told me he got it, and then, like, he didn't even know he had it back when I got, so it was one that, like, I talked to like 3 people, like, outside of my direct family, and then whatever. But I just really haven't thought about death until very recently, because I just realized, when I think it's because just the idea of being 60 years old, and I can see the writing on the wall. There's been a few things over the years, but not. I mean, I think about it quite a bit now. Like how it's going to go down, and also the collapse of the system's coming, and I mean, a lot of people are going to die. Like it's just going to be that. Like it's I mean, it's not the debt-based thing or it's the the quality of people. Like we're so degraded now, and everyone's going in the wrong direction, and each generation gets worse, and this generation growing up with internet and now AI and all this stuff, and like they're not even living remotely anything that resembles a natural human life, and like the whole thing's fucked. And as great as the technology is in terms of making our lives easier, it hurts us in pretty much every possible way. Like cable TV was a major blow to human evolution and human development, and it was nothing like the internet, which is far worse. And so, we're going the wrong direction. You can see it or not. I don't fucking have to explain it. But, it's just there. So all that stuff's there. And I don't know what life's going to be like, and it might be different for, where you are, and even in terms of, you're one county over, it's going to be completely different than the next county, like that kind of thing. Part of the country will be, fucking destroyed. I mean, whatever happens, World War III, whatever's going to happen, there's all these predictions and the Whispers of the Brighter World messages, which I believe to be 100% accurate, but whatever. It's either going to happen or it's not, but all these things. And so, and who knows what's going to happen to the internet, and, how some people might have electricity, other people won't, like, who knows what's going to happen. And so in all that, there is this body of work, and I don't know when I'm going to stop making videos, but there's, thousands of hours, and it's got information in here that, I mean, would help people. My first videos, the original videos, were my family and I learning to live on a homestead, and then the truther stuff, and of course the spiritual stuff. But there's information here that and the energy and the condition that's here, it'll just always be here until it isn't, unless YouTube collapses or whatever. And there's a body of work, and as long as there's an audience, or there's the capacity for people to click into these things, there'll be these things. And there'll be this playlist. Just in terms of these things, these episodes I've been having, I feel like I didn't feel it for like 3 months. Like the condition had gone. I think I got 1 migraine during that time, but I'm not getting migraines. There's some kind of vascular thing. But like, I have tightness in my calves. And we had this trampoline, these kind of, not trampoline, but one of those rebounders. And my wife got it, and it's supposed to have all these health benefits, and I did it, and I really liked it. But I don't know if that's contributing to the thing or whatever. A couple of things happened where I saw a video where this woman was, I'm not sure what she does, but she interviewed a gastroenterologist, or whatever you say, a stomach doctor. And her thesis or her idea was that all these people were having heart issues because their stomachs were swelling, right, post-COVID. And this doctor confirmed that when the stomach swells up, it put pressure on the heart, right? There's limited, you have this chest cavity, and if your stomach bloats, it put pressure on your heart. And people were experiencing issues because of that. And I fully felt that because I felt like that was happening to me quite a bit post-COVID. And I don't think my stomach was swelling for any kind of normal reason. It like comes and it goes. And so there was that. And then I found this other video, or my wife did, I'm not sure which, but we watched it. And this young woman was talking about how you could make your heart younger by doing 7 minutes a day of more intense, getting your heart rate up. And I started to do the jump up, and I started to walk real fast. I do a lot of exercise, but not exercise where I get out of breath or whatever. Sometimes doing farm work. But I started doing that, and it's after about 3 months, your heart gets like more, I don't want to say brittle, less elastic, less flexible as you get older because you're not getting your heart rate up. And I started to do that. I saw a transformation. And that was, and I did that for about a year, and I thought it was going great, and then the whole thing started for me, right? And so those are the things, when I hear something, when something comes to me, and it just clicks, or, there's some kind of connection to my situation, I have to take that into consideration. And, why am I getting this information if, and then, of course, this thing happened. But I feel it's a condition. I can feel it like the days I'm like, this could be a day where it happens. But some days I don't feel any kind of, my heart's just running fine. There's no issues. There's no irregular heartbeat at all. And then sometimes I get, few irregular heartbeats, but it doesn't lead to anything. And so, I thought it was pretty much better. And then I've had 3 recent things, and those things aren't as bad as the first go round. This chiropractor, I went in there and I thought I had a hiatal hernia, which is where part of your stomach goes through this sphincter that holds your stomach acid in. And so you have part of your stomach is not where it's supposed to be. And you can go to a chiropractor and they pull it down. People wrote to me about chiropractors being scammers. Well, every medical person can be scammers. There's money in medicine. And so there is the chiropractic stuff that, when I first went to a chiropractor, he clearly helped me. And, I was in my 20s and I was dating this nurse, and she had insurance and I didn't. She was working for some hospital and I was waiting tables. And he was charging me $20 a visit, and it was cash. And she was on insurance, and he kept on wanting to see her 3 times a week, and he cut me down to like once. Because, they wanted to milk the insurance money. Like mostly, and most insurance policies back then didn't have chiropractic as part of it, right? There's things where they just you keep on going, but you're not really experiencing any benefit. Sometimes they can over adjust you, and it actually can hurt worse. But the guy I go see now, it's a whole, there's an acupuncturist there. He's an acupuncturist. This guy's more of a, holistic, naturopathic healer. He makes, he uses allopathic medicine to diagnose it, but it's still hit or miss. And the chiropractor there, I told him about the hiatal hernia, and he tried to pull my stomach down. And then he took this machine, which is called the Pro Adjuster, and it has similar energy to your heart rate. And he said he needed to tighten my muscles by my diaphragm, and he put this machine on it. And I didn't like the way it felt. And then the next day I had my first attack. So I felt like, I think that had something to do with it. I looked up the Pro Adjuster, and he's the guy I like least in the whole practice. And they say they don't use force there. That's their whole thing, is that when you use force, there's a counter force. They don't do regular chiropractic adjustments. They use this handheld adjuster, which you can buy. It's a whole thing. And, we don't have a really great healthcare system. Like it talks about Whispers of the Brighter World, we really don't get the whole healthcare. It talks about the importance of the glands that we know nothing about, and the spiritual aspect of the subtle bodies. And at some point there'll be a healthcare system that incorporates all these things. And it seems like, some things work for some people and others, work for others. But, we really don't know what we're, doing. And now they're releasing another, it seems like they're going to push another pandemic with this fucking Ebola thing or whatever. they're depopulating, and so there's going to be a time where like real shit's going to happen. Like where hundreds of millions of people are dying, and there's war. I mean, just things are going to change dramatically, and then people are going to have to deal with it. And I say, in all that, you're not going to be as happy, but you might at least listen to this stuff about finding divinity within you. And the Gracefulness Meditation channel is always there, and this is a rare opportunity, and hopefully people will end up gravitating to it. Anyways, let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.